Hi, today I want to talk about 10 things you shouldn't do, 10 don'ts when it comes to language learning. I'm not trying to put those out there as negative things because these are things that I feel sap your confidence, and confidence is so important in language learning. And I relate it to golf. Actually, I'm a very poor golfer. For my age, I'm relatively flexible, relatively strong, relatively athletic. A lot of people who are not as athletic as I am are much better golfers. And that's because I struggle with some of the very same issues in my golf that I think some language learners struggle with in their language learning. So here we go. Number one, don't put pressure on yourself. Don't put pressure on yourself not to speak. Don't put pressure on yourself to speak. Don't put pressure on yourself to speak well. Speak when you want to and let it all come out. Rely on your instincts. Don't put pressure on yourself. Don't think you're going to master the basics. We often hear this, just master the basics, as if there's something basic, whether it be a vocabulary item or a structure in the language. First of all, you can't master it. It doesn't prevent you from acquiring more words, from acquiring more familiarity with the language. It's a bit, again, like the golf swing. Whenever I try to have a perfect golf swing, try to remember all the things that I'm supposed to do, I play more poorly. If I just swing naturally, with confidence, I do better. In fact, one of the things that triggered this video was an audiobook that my son suggested to me because we played golf yesterday in Palm Springs and it didn't do very well as usual. And he said, you've got to listen to this book by Dr. Bob Rotella, where he talks about the psychological side of golf, where you can't expect to be perfect all the time. And so don't try to master the basics. Acquire the language through listening and reading, as I say all the time here. And then when you have a chance to speak, just go with what you got. And I am guilty of doing the same in golf, of not doing this. But now that I've been listening to this audiobook, I'm going to try my best. And we are golfing today, and I'm going to try my best to just go with what I've got. Whatever happens, accept it. So don't try to master the basics. It's a futile exercise. It will lead to more frustration, and it'll sap your confidence. Because, in fact, it's very difficult to master the basics. You will continue to make mistakes with the basics for a long, long time. And certainly, if you haven't had a lot of exposure to the language, like early on, I think it's impossible to master the basics. Number 3, don't focus on memorization. Again, it's going to sap your confidence because we are always going to forget. We'll put a lot of effort into a spaced repetition system or a memorization system. And for most of us, there's undoubtedly exceptions out there and people who swear by this as a method of learning. But I find that if the focus is on memorization, you're going to be more frustrated when you can't remember. If the focus is on enjoying the language, acquiring the words naturally in not a spaced repetition system, but a random repetition system through the content that you're listening to. And research tends to indicate that we retain things better when we encounter them in different contexts, rather than trying to zero in on a list of words, not to mention all of the other inconveniences with SRS, but some people like them fine. But I feel that it saps your confidence because you are going to forget. So don't focus on memorization. You're setting yourself up for frustration. So focus on memorization? No. Number 4, don't get frustrated at what you can't do. One of the keys to success and progress in language learning, in my opinion, is to make good use of easier material with a lot of repetition, like the mini stories or even graded readers, but then push yourself forward into more challenging material, more interesting material, and don't get frustrated when you can't progress as easily, where there are words that, if you're on link, that are yellow that you've looked up before and now you don't know what they mean. Don't just stay with the easy material. They are a stepping stone, but you have to move beyond those easy readers, graded readers, many stories. Staying with learner material, staying with graded readers, to me, that's a no-no. Number 5, don't try to pursue native-like pronunciation. It's a futile task. You will be disappointed. I don't use the International Phonetic Alphabet because if I were learning English and I listen to Australians and I listen to people from the US South or from, Ulster, Scotland, they're all going to pronounce the vowels a little differently. So how does that International Phonetic Alphabet symbol help me? I've got to put the time into listening. My focus is not on perfecting my pronunciation. I never spend any time on pitch accent in Japanese, for example. And throughout my life, I've done business with people whose native language is not English, and I hear them on television. And if they use the language well and elegantly and eloquently, as I say, the accent almost adds a little bit of class to their English. And I'm sure the same is true in other languages. So don't focus too much on having perfect pronunciation. It doesn't matter. It can only lead to frustration. Number 6, shadowing. I don't shadow. I'm not saying you shouldn't shadow. If you like shadowing, you should do things that you like to do. I tried it. I found it frustrating. I found that either I was listening to very easy material, like the mini stories where I knew the content, and then for a while I could shadow, but then I lost interest because it's not really meaningful to me. Or if I'm listening to interesting content that's new to me, full of interesting information on history or whatever it might be, I want to focus in on the meaning. So whatever I do, I like it to be meaningful and authentic. To me, although many people rave about shadowing, it's not something that I do. Bear in mind that my don'ts here are not telling people what to do. It's more a matter of, based on my experience, these are things that I don't find useful or which in many cases sap my confidence and my momentum in learning the language. But everyone doesn't have to agree with me. Number 7, role-playing. Role-playing is a staple of many language courses. The idea is that we'll pretend that, you are a doctor and I'm a patient, and we have an artificial conversation about that situation, and we play these different roles, doctor or patient. Personally, I don't enjoy doing these. I think they are not authentic. They give you a false sense of security, which will lead to frustration, because if you are actually in a scenario like buying a ticket at the train station and you have been practicing that and you say something to the teller at the train station and he or she comes back with something typically quite different, then you're frustrated. So you're far better, in my view, in working on improving your overall level in the language in order to be able to deal with all the possible situations that could arrive in any given scenario. So trying to master the scenario is a shortcut that doesn't work. It distracts you from the goal, the real goal, which is to elevate your level in the language. And through lots of listening and reading and speaking to many different people on many different subjects, your overall confidence level in the language will increase, and you're then in a better position to just let it go, rather than, as me with my golf swing, trying to remember what I was supposed to say in this particular scenario. Next, testing. Don't test unless you need the test for your job or entrance into university, which is perfectly understandable. But if you are learning for fun, testing, whether it be a 10-question questionnaire or an hour-long test, is a lot of pressure, a lot of self-doubt, and actually it's not necessary. The only real test is when you are listening to something, do you understand? When you're interacting with people, do they understand you? Do you feel comfortable? This is what we should be trying to achieve in our language learning. And if we gear ourselves for the test, we end up doing some of the same things that I am very much against here, like studying long lists of words, vocabulary for TOEFL. And of course, we know from research on the brain that the more time we spend deliberately trying to, focus in on certain words, the less we learn. The brain gets turned off. The brain likes new things. The brain likes seeing words in different contexts. So the test approach tends to direct learners into learning activities that are not helpful in the long-term goal of improving their language skills. And of course, we get things wrong. There's pressure. We feel frustrated when we keep on making mistakes. So unless you need the test, don't test. Here's another no-no. Don't always ask, how quickly can I learn? We have videos, learn this language in a week, in 3 months. It'll take as long as it takes. Don't put pressure on yourself to learn quickly. Rather, you should be looking at, how can I enjoy the learning process? I enjoy what I'm doing in Persian. I've been at my Persian, Arabic, and Turkish now for 3, 4, 5 years. I enjoy it. Now, maybe some people are in a hurry. I think I would have, been more successful in those 3 languages if I focused in on one and if I spent more time every day. So those are some of the things that affect how quickly you're going to proceed and how quickly you're going to progress in the language. But don't put pressure on yourself to learn it in a short period of time. I think it's counterproductive. It saps your confidence. And finally, number 10, which kind of relates to all of these parts, give yourself credit for what you can do. This comes out in the audiobook that I started listening to on golf. If I play a game of golf and all I think about is the shots that I missed, I come away from that golf game genuinely unhappy. If I can remember the good shots, if I can feel happy with what I was able to achieve, then I'm more confident, more motivated, more likely to continue. There are always moments in language learning where we forget, we don't understand, we're disappointed, but we shouldn't be disappointed because we should pick out those things that we are able to do. In other words, I started the language 2 years ago. I now understand a lot. I'm able to say certain things. Maybe I met someone at the somewhere who I spoke to in Farsi at a store. We were buying, which is a real case, buying, kitchen appliances. And I had a fairly lengthy conversation in Farsi. So I have to try to remember those positive moments when I felt that I had some success, rather than focusing in on moments when we didn't achieve or didn't perform as well as we would have liked to. So don't beat yourself up. Give yourself credit for what you could do. And if you follow these 10 don'ts, and I don't want to be like dictatorial, you must do this or do that, because amongst the things that I suggest you don't do, there are things that people do enjoy doing. And if they enjoy doing them, do them. Because ultimately, the main thing is to enjoy the process, feel good about yourself so that you continue learning the language. Thank you for listening. Bye.